This podcast is brought to you by Voice and Vision, bringing help, hope, and healing to individuals, families, and communities affected by mental illness, addictions, and disabilities in Southeastern Pennsylvania.
Welcome to Untold Valor, a podcast with a unique focus on veterans, featuring stories of courage, recovery, perseverance, and strength. Listen to hear veterans share their perspectives on what it's like to battle mental health challenges, combat addictions, and overcome other adversities unique to those who have served.
Back once again for another edition of Untold Valor into Season 4. Thank you so much for all the support that we get here on the podcast, helping veterans and just people associated with that walk of life, getting the resources and help that they need. And we're excited to kick off Season 4 with a special guest. We've got Kimberly Hollenback here with us, who is part of VOCA. She's a supervising attorney. I'm going to have her explain to what this is here in just a second. LASP's regional VOCA supervising attorney, and really talking about maybe getting help when you need to in legal situations and often around domestic violence. So that's going to be our conversation piece this week here on the podcast. And of course, Reverend Ben's here as always. Reverend Ben, how are you, my friend?
I'm ready to go. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. Kim, welcome in. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here with us and chatting with us. So obviously a little bit different take this week. You know, we obviously deal with a lot of times talking to prior veterans or people who work in veterans organizations, helping them with legal issues or homelessness or PTSD or drug addiction, so on and so forth. But domestic violence and violence also happens in this arena as well. And of course, it just affects a large population, period. So we thought this would be a great topic to talk about. So tell us a little bit about you and what your organization does.
Absolutely. So I am an attorney for Legal Aid of Southeastern Pennsylvania, or LASP. We are a nonprofit law firm that helps low-income victims of domestic violence and seniors with certain civil legal issues. Usually it's any kind of civil legal issue, except we don't do like criminal defense work. So I work under a special project, which is under VOCA, which is the Victim of Crimes Act, a special grant that allows us to represent victims of domestic violence and crime in civil legal issues. So the most common scenarios that pop up in our practice are family law issues, just because the definition of domestic violence has to do with your relationship with the other person.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of what we call protection from abuse orders, which are restraining orders, but we do a lot of child custody, no asset, no fault divorces, landlord-tenant stuff that might pop up because you're a victim of domestic violence. And we have VOCA staff who only represent victims of domestic violence. That's their practice. In the 4 collar counties around Philadelphia. So everywhere that LASP practices, we have specialists that only do domestic violence work. And
Gotcha.
That's Chester, Bucks, Montgomery, and I'm out of Delaware County. I'm in media.
Gotcha. Okay. And Reverend Ben, this is something that obviously affects and rolls over to our demographic that we talk to and for and about, because when you're struggling to kind of maybe put your life back together, dealing with some PTSD or some drug addictions or alcohol addictions, unfortunately, sometimes domestic violence is a side effect of that. Is that what you see when you're counseling as well, Ben?
Absolutely. And I find it very important that we draw some attention to the matter of domestic abuse, because it affects not only veterans, but the whole population. But a lot of the things that veterans are experiencing with PTSD and other things dealing with trauma often lead to domestic abuse. So the reason I wanted to have Kim on today is to spread the word to the community at large, especially the veterans too, that there is help there for people who are experiencing domestic violence.
Yeah. And so, Kim, you mentioned that this is legal aid, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times this is going to be folks that maybe can't get assistance on their own. This is getting help financially with some of the costs and things of that nature. How does that work?
Yeah, so we're a nonprofit law firm. So we represent victims of domestic violence, also regardless of income. So we have a special grant where we can help anybody that is a victim of domestic violence, regardless of how much they make, which normally for legal aid, there are income caps.
Right.
So that helps us sort of answer that sort of in between of, you probably don't have enough to spend like $5,000 on a retainer to hire a private attorney.
Correct. Yeah.
But you also might not be 125% of the poverty level, which is really, really low. And that also helps us answer sort of like the financial abuse that occurs in these relationships, where it's like, maybe on paper, it looks like you and your husband make a whole lot of money, but actually you might not have any access to that information.
Great
and also
point.
Just going off of what Rev Ben said is, If you think you don't know anybody that's a victim of domestic violence, you're actually wrong. You definitely do. It affects generally 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men. And also, both of those statistics are underreported to begin with.
Yeah.
Also, 1 in 7 women will be a victim of stalking in her lifetime, and 1 in 10 men. So you know somebody. And unfortunately, too, like we were talking about, is it does disproportionately affect veterans and people in the military for those reasons you already talked about, right? There's these extra added stressors,
Right.
and there also can be this sort of power imbalance as well. So it definitely is a good issue to raise to the public in general, but also to veterans and military families.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times when we're talking with veterans or we're talking with resource folks that come onto the show to help us with the things they offer, it's a question of asking for help, right? So obviously, I'm sure that is the same problem here. Sometimes if you're the victim, no matter if you're male or female, it's difficult to ask for help. I would imagine that's probably even tougher on the male side, just because of the whole stigma around, being macho and this, that, and the other, right? Yep. So is this anonymous to kind of get started if people are feeling a little nervous, or how does that kind of work?
That's a good question. So I'm a lawyer, right? So lawyers have confidentiality with their clients. I can't go around telling other people what you said to me. And in fact, I always start with that when I get a phone call from somebody or if I'm meeting with somebody in my office, is I let them know. Mm-hmm. Number one, we have confidentiality. Anything that you tell me stays between me and LASP. But we also have what's called attorney-client privilege, which means we can't be forced to testify about what we talk about either. So even if I'm representing you in a hearing, nobody can be like, hey, what did Kim tell you during your meeting?
Right.
Right? So I tell people, look, this is really hard stuff. And we try to practice what we call in a trauma-informed way, which is recognizing how trauma affects the brain, the ability to remember and recall things, and also just sort of letting it be a client-focused approach. So we try to do that the best that we can so people feel comfortable opening up. But if anybody is listening and worried about if I come and talk to Kim about my legal problem, I can't tell anybody.
Yeah.
It's confidential.
Yeah. And I think most of us know it, but sometimes it's hard to get over that hump, right? That kind of that feeling of, this is going to come back at me somehow or whatever the case might be. And so there's definitely some resources, and we'll have those in the links of the show description this week on the podcast, folks. So go check that out. But let me give it out as well. So if you go to lasp.org, lasp.org, there's a lot of resources there. You can also just click on the domestic violence tab. There is an apply online piece there you can click on. There's a phone number you can go, and you guys have events and stuff as well. So it looks like you guys have a lot of good different things there for folks to check out. So go again, check that out at lasp.org /domestic violence. What's some of the big takeaways maybe you'd like to share with folks listening who, maybe find themselves in a situation or maybe know someone that is, as you said earlier, and trying to, I guess, maybe start that conversation?
Yeah, I'll say
Kim,
too.
before you answer that question, I want to just add one thing. A lot of times when people think about domestic abuse, they think about physical abuse.
Yes.
But there's also emotional abuse,
absolutely,
mental abuse, and financial abuse.
Yeah.
So just because a person's not walking on a black eye, their scars could be deeper on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Great point.
Absolutely. And honestly, that can sometimes be worse, right? That's what I tell people.
Mm-hmm.
So just generally, domestic violence is defined as just a pattern of behavior that's used to gain or maintain power over another individual that you have a certain relationship with, right? So an intimate partner, a spouse, an ex-spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, family member, or household. Also, it doesn't have to be an intimate relationship, right? Like we have lots of cases with elderly parents against their younger children. But you're right, it can be physical, can be verbal. I was talking about financial abuse. That's really common. Psychological. We hear a lot about sort of a hot button topic is gaslighting, like making you feel like your reality is not what you're experiencing.
Oh, okay.
So the way I describe it to my clients too is like domestic violence is sort of like somebody gets all of these tentacles into you. And I'm sorry, it's a really gross metaphor, but any aspect that somebody can gain power and control over your life, that is an instance that could be domestic violence.
Gotcha.
So if you think about power over your kids, your immigration status, your money, your property, right? It's not even just like abusing you physically, like we talked about, is they will exert that power and control over every aspect of your life, which makes it so hard to leave. On average, it takes people usually about 7 times before they officially leave and get out of their relationship.
Okay.
But also, Another thing to mention is there's all these different types of abuse, right? But for me to get you a restraining order, which is an order of protection from abuse, keeping this person away from you, having them not contact you, there generally has to be some type of physical abuse or fear of bodily injury. So Pennsylvania is a little bit behind the times and sort of recognizing that, like, hey, there's all these different types of abuse, and there's lots of reasons for that, right? They want to make sure they're triaging and bringing the most serious, quote unquote, cases to court. But that can be a really difficult conversation is like, you're a victim of domestic violence, but I can't legally get you this restraining order. So then we have to talk about other things, right? Of like safety planning. Is there other things that we can help them with legally? So
that's a great point. I was going to ask you that. I was going to say, typically, is that that's what probably most people think as they come in and say, hey, I need a restraining order against such and such, right?
Yep. And two, especially nowadays, there's so much harassment like through technology. And even that, like other states cover just harassment under their restraining order. If in your case in Pennsylvania, it's just under the definition of harassment, I can't get you a restraining order against this other person, which is really frustrating because it's annoying and it's disruptive. There has to be some type of fear of bodily injury. Now, I can usually sort of argue it in a way that, the judges buy it, but especially with technology nowadays, like people can harass and stalk and abuse you in so many different ways. It's exhausting.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it can get complicated, obviously, right, from a legal standpoint. And I think maybe sometimes that's why people tend to not go through with it. There's the fear factor, which we talked about, but I think then there's the worry of the complication factor, like I don't have the time, I don't have the resources, I don't have the whatever. So is that something you experience as well?
Absolutely. I just had someone in my office earlier that was just like, I'm embarrassed to have to do this. Like, it's shameful. I don't want to have to go to court. And you have to go back to court quite a few times too, especially it's like if it's a restraining order case. It's not something that's easy, and we also don't have very trauma-informed court systems. So a lot of times you're pretty close to your abuser in court. You have to talk in front of them. Some judges, if you're doing a hearing, will actually let a defendant cross-examine you if you don't have a lawyer. So it's scary.
Yeah.
And people do give up, right? Like that happens.
For sure.
But we're always here when they come back. I have people on their, fifth, sixth, seventh PFAs coming back, and we can still help. It's okay.
Gotcha. So how did you get here? How did you find yourself here?
It's a good question. So I went to law school always knowing that I wanted to do something in the public interest realm. I kind of think that if you get this education and you get these tools, that you need to use them in a way to make some type of good. I never was interested in representing private people. I hate talking about money. I don't want to deal with any of that. So I actually, in law school, started a domestic violence law society with a couple of my friends, because at that time there was this sort of movement of like looking at domestic violence a little bit differently in our court system, and we wanted to sort of be part of that. And then after law school, I clerked for a judge who was mainly doing domestic violence in New Jersey, and I kind of found that I really liked that.
Gotcha.
People say I'm really weird and it's crazy, but like I love doing protection from abuse orders. Like I feel like I'm doing exactly what I'm meant to do. And I think it's just like being able to use the knowledge that I have to help give somebody else power. I think that is like it's really something that sort of called out to me.
Yeah. Ben, any thoughts from you? Any questions that from you haven't asked so far?
Yeah, one thing I've noticed about a lot of the speakers we have on Untold Valor, what you just said is common among everybody. If you're doing any kind of work where you have any human service type of work, you're serving humans.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to do it from your heart or you're in the wrong field.
Absolutely. Get burnout immediately. And we have people that come thinking they want to do it, and then they get in the trenches and realize that this isn't for them. So I've been doing this for about 7 years now.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of industries, right? I think sometimes you want to help, you want to get into an industry where you can help people, but it's tough, and it's mentally, it's not for everyone, right? There's a lot to process.
Yeah, I have bad days. We all do, right?
Sure.
But I find that like the universe just kind of sends me a reminder every time I'm like about to be like, I can't do this anymore. Like everyone's mad at me. All the clients are mad at me. I'm trying to help them. Then I get like a really good case, a good client who's really grateful. And I'm like, oh, right. Okay.
This
this
is
why I'm doing this. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Kim, a lot of times what we do is we just kind of set folks up to talk about themselves and what they do. Obviously, you've done a great job with all of that. We also try to leave each episode with some thoughts, some pieces of wisdom, or something where maybe someone who is not sure where to turn or how to start or whatever the case is. So you've obviously helped a lot of people. You're going through and doing this. What's some words that you would share with someone if they know someone who's struggling with this, or are themselves struggling with this? Like, where's a place to start mentally? Wherever you want to go, wherever you want to take that.
Gotcha. So I think mentally is like, you need to understand that you're not alone. People are experiencing the same exact things as you. And I have a lot of clients that come into my office and they say, like, I was so stupid. Like, I can't believe I didn't see that. All these warning signs and red flags are popping up now. Well, you have the benefit of hindsight now, right? You didn't have that. And I like to tell people, like, nobody tells you on your first date with them, hey, in 3 years,
Right.
I'm going to be horribly abusive to you, right?
Right.
And it's not bad every second of every day. So if you're sitting there and you're in one of these situations, like, you shouldn't feel shame. You shouldn't feel guilt. It's not your fault. And if you need help, there's a lot of places out there that can help. There's a lot of domestic violence specific organizations. Each county generally has a domestic violence organization that has things like counseling, shelters, advocates, things like that. And also, I'm a good place to start. I will always at least give somebody advice as long as there's no conflict of interest, and point them to the right direction and confidentially.
All right. Well, look, folks, if you need some help, that's the key, right? You got to start. You've got to reach out somewhere. You got to ask somebody for some help. So again, go check out the links that we'll have in the show notes, or just go to LASP.org. That's LASP.org, and reach out to Kim and her staff today. You can call them at 877-429-5994. That's the helpline, 877-429-5994. Thank you so much for your time, Kimberly. I appreciate it. Anything we didn't ask or share that you'd like to as we wrap up?
I don't think so, unless you guys have something you wanted to hear about.
No, I think we got it covered for right now. We'd love to have you back on. Maybe we'll talk more in depthly, some case studies or things of that nature where you can, obviously. And we'll have a future chat. But again, if you need help, folks, always reach out to some qualified professionals for help. There's a lot of different help and resources we have in the show links each and every week here on Untold Valor. So get started right there. That's a great place to go. And Reverend Ben, thank you for your time as always. Kimberly, thank you for your time. We appreciate it so much. And we'll catch you next time here on Untold Valor, Veterans Recovery in Action. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify or whatever app you enjoy using, and share it with others who might benefit from the message. We'll see you next time. You've been listening to Untold Valor by Voice and Vision. We hope you found the information and resources discussed today helpful. As always, thank you for listening and for your support. Remember to stay connected with us through our various social media platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Don't forget to visit the website, voiceandvisioninc.org. That's voiceandvisioninc.org, where you can sign up for our blog and find free resources and information on upcoming events, webinars, workshops, and get support. You can also access our free help and hope guide for individuals and families struggling with substance use and addiction. If someone you know is struggling, please reach out for help, because you and your life matter. Remember, the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is available to you at any time by dialing 988. We are all ambassadors of hope and recovery, and if you want to share your story, please contact us. Compeer Corps is also looking for veteran mentor volunteers and veteran participants. To find out more information about Compeer Corps, please call 610-541-0790. That's 610-541-0790. You can find all the links and contact information for the resources mentioned on today's episode by checking the description and the show notes section of your app. Thank you again for tuning in and for your support. Until next time, this has been Untold Valor.